Hey there all you girl travelers, namaste. Seeing as I've been rolling out the videos for India, I thought I'd go ahead and start my travel survival series. It's something that I've been starting and I do every once in a while when I hit certain countries and there's a lot of information that I feel like I want to give to you, or a lot of questions that you've been asking me about that country. So I kind of bundle them all up into like 5 tips that I feel would be essential for you to know. So I realized the last time I did this series with Seoul, it was a 2-part series. One was on trip planning for Seoul and the other one was on surviving Korean culture. So I thought I'd go ahead and do the same thing with India because India is just a huge country. Here we go. Today's video is going to be on the top 5 travel essentials for surviving Indian culture. Number 1, you will need acceptance and an open mind. When most people ask me about India, I will start off saying it's a very challenging country to travel. And it's not so much because it's hard or it's dangerous. The challenging comes in that you will be seeing things that are almost like the flip side of Alice's looking glass. You will see things in a very raw and real way. One thing that shakes a lot of travelers, especially when they first arrive, is seeing an overwhelming amount of poverty and chaos. Slums, people that are poor, beggars and touts. That all exists. Accept it, move on. The cars, people, pedestrians, rickshaws, taxis, all of them are crossing the streets at the same time. There's like this very chaotic feeling. Accept it, move on. At the end of the day, you will have dirt under your nails from all the pollution. Accept it, move on. Your white hotel sheets might not always be white. Sometimes they're a little off-white, with little stains or little dirt specks now and then. Accept it. Move on. You will have to pay strict attention to hygiene. Watch that video. Accept it, move on. There are times that you will feel like India's a dirty country. If you're a germaphobe, don't go there. Accept it, move on. Truth is, despite all of that, there are travelers like myself who will fall in love with India even harder. It's almost like that exciting roller coaster ride. You're screaming all the way down, but when you finally reach the base, you realize that was fun, you want to do it all over again. The more closed-minded we are to accepting change or even going with the flow of it in India, the more that limits us from being connected with it. By accepting it all straight off, knowing that's how it's going to be, it almost kind of like removes the illusion so that you can actually see the real beauty of the country. For instance, poverty is a fact. However, even the poorest of people in India still take pride in their lifestyle and their cleanliness. They try their best to be clean and neat wherever they can. And there's a lot of men who dress very neatly. White pressed starched shirts. And I've never passed an Indian that smelled like a New York homeless man in a public subway station. As chaotic as India can seem at times, it's usually because you're approaching it from your mind and not your intuition or your gut. If you go with the flow in the way that the traffic does, in the way that Indians do as they weave and dodge and find their own way to where they're going, traveling India becomes a whole lot easier.
Is it just me or her hand gestures
tend to go with
bugging the crap out of you?
In their life, situations in which things don't turn out or aren't predictable. If you incorporate that philosophy in your travels, it becomes so much easier. When the train breaks down, well, just go with the flow. If the taxis that you're hailing don't stop to pick you up because you're going to a destination that they don't want to go to, well, you just go with the flow and hail the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until someone picks you up. As for dirt under the nails every day, I know that I can always clean them. And even though my hotel sheets are not the color of white, like this, that's probably because they've been sent out to the launderers, who are these guys. In many cases, the reasons for some of these things not matching the standards that you're used to in your own country happens to have a very interesting story behind it. That's why I love going to India. I'm constantly discovering these new, more interesting stories. Number 2, dress code. First of all, because India is super conservative, I like to respect that culture and dress conservative myself. Some things you want to abstain from are showing your bare shoulders or showing your thigh. That means tank tops and mini skirts or micro shorts are definitely out. In fact, I would say, yeah, just keep the shorts at home, go with pants or a long skirt. Because I'm always going to carry at least 1 or 2 tank tops for when it's hot. I like to also carry a scarf for me in the case I forget that I'm not supposed to wear a tank top. and I kind of wrap myself or bundle myself up in the scarf. Scarves are always good. They come in handy. If you go to Sikh temples, you'll find that you'll have to cover your head. Another option is to dress Indian style. Even though as a traveler you will not blend in completely with Indians, you will still kind of give off the appearance of being more streetwise and in the know. Indians might take you as anyone from an expat to a traveler that really understands their kind of culture, or even someone who might be married to another Indian. Some clothing options are a regular Indian dress shirt or a pab, and that's just kind of like a long-sleeved, sheer and lightweight shirt. And a lot of times people like it because it's got that hippie bohemian feel and it's very comfortable in the heat. My other favorite item is the kurta, and it's just kind of like a long blouse shirt. Is it safe to travel India as a female solo traveler? India is not one of those countries that I feel as like red alert about. I would say it's like an orange flag, like somewhere down here. No matter where you go in the world, you're always going to want to practice religiously your street smarts and your travel safety. There are good and bad people out there anywhere you go. Recognize a whole lot of crime going on in India. Not saying that it doesn't exist. It does exist. There are corrupt parts of the government and corrupt officials out there. You might encounter occasional touts and scams, but for the most part, it's like any other country. For the female traveler, sexual harassment is a problem in India. It's a big problem. They have a larger population of men than they actually do women. Not to mention the fact that Indian culture is very conservative. You will not see public displays of affection between men and women very common at all. In fact, that would be something I would say do not do if you're a couple. You will see brotherly love in the form of two men holding hands, and that's considered very normal. Because India is very conservative, things such as dress code are important, as well as understanding what's considered sexual harassment. The simplest things of men and women coming in contact with each other can be questionable. Even if you're in a very crowded bus, if a man leans against you or presses against you, it can be considered unwanted physical contact. Indian women will deal with it in two ways. Either they will be quiet about it and feel like they've been victimized, or some of them will call attention to it. I've seen women go as far as beating the guy with their bag and screaming at them. For female travelers, sometimes the Indian men like to test how far they can go because they know that Western women are a little more sexually tolerant of those things. You might get catcalls or sexual harassment in the form of light brushing against you, a boob graze. The more extreme level, maybe it's like a boob grab or an ass grab. That could potentially happen. And if it does, then my ways of combating it would be, or have been, a quick jab, nudge them back, or yell at them. I would also call the attention of a police officer to come over. If you don't want to yell, then I would just whip around and just look at them really pissed off. Generally, that lets the man know that he's not gotten away with it, even though you're a foreign woman. Now, in one case, there were little boys who ran by me and were gonna grab my ass, and I saw this coming. The moment he grabbed my ass, I kind of like nudged him and he went flying. We were doing this to test how far they could go, and it was kind of like a game to them. Sexual harassment laws in India are actually fairly extreme and punishable. For women travelers in general, I always suggest that you just go online and Google what's considered appropriate and inappropriate for the country you're going to, whether it's India or any country. And that's because it's always good to know what the laws are and what your rights are as a female. Number 4, what makes Indians stare? I say like 95% of the time it is because they're curious about you. You are something that they've never seen before or aren't familiar with, or you're holding something that they aren't familiar with. So they will stare, and they generally won't blink, and they watch you as you do what you do. You're just so mysterious and curious that they need to observe
I stare at people all the time.
Everything that you do and everything that you bring out that they've never seen before. And there are 2 things that I find very common that they're interested in or they will stare at. One of those things happens to be a camera. You wonder why in some of my videos I talk very softly. It's because I'm trying not to attract any attention. When I was in India, I was vlogging with my little selfie camera, and even though it was small like this camera, the moment I flipped out my screen and they saw a picture on it, it was like, Doing this and talking to myself is not something that's very comfortable to me when I'm in India. So you don't know how many Indians are staring at me. It makes vlogging a little uncomfortable when you're like me, who's alone and a woman. But this is something that can also be a great way to communicate with Indians, actually. So when you turn your camera on them, they're actually very enthusiastic and happy.
Hey,
it's literally hard
up, dude?
not to be a good or great portrait photographer when you're in India. And the smiles that you will see lighting up on people's faces as you turn your camera on them will be just magical.
Oh, look
you
at that
will
little
like fall in love just with all their smiles. One thing that I like to do when I'm in India and they start staring at this camera, and of course I want to take photos of people. If I take photos of them, then I will definitely share it with them. I will flip out the screen and I will just show them their photo, and a lot of times they're really amazed. Indian people tend to see a camera and think of celebrities, stardom, Bollywood. Only famous people get their photos taken. And I like using my camera to photograph Indian people because this is their chance to feel important and beautiful. This is a great way to share your experience with other people. In India, the second most popular thing that's stared at is not only the tourists, more specifically the blonde hair, blue-eyed, and fair-skinned foreigners. You've just won the staring lottery. For me, because I'm part Asian and I have dark hair, I tend to blend a little bit more. Now, if you are a family that has a child that matches those traits, then just be aware that your child might be the new sensation. There are certain Indians who might not know any better and who will want to touch your child, either to see if your child is real, or I don't know if it's like touching a Buddha belly or what. They don't want to harm it, but it's like this aura. Your child is like an angelic being. In Asia, just in general, anyone that has blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin will get a starring traveler role. The rest of us will just kind of stand behind like background actors. We're like extras. Yeah, we don't get that star attention. Yeah, you're lucky. Number 5, jazz hands. One of the greatest things that I love about India is that it always makes a stronger traveler out of me, and a stronger solo traveler too. I find that I'm able to approach things with more flexibility. It teaches you how to deal with things as they change, and that's more organic. It teaches me to be more adventurous, and I feel a whole lot more adventurous because nothing is predictable or is as structured as I experience in the US. It teaches me a flip side of life that feels a whole lot more natural, raw, and real. There are times that I actually feel like even the dirt in India feels a lot cleaner than the dirt in the US. That's probably because I don't actually have allergies in India, even as dusty as it is. Whereas in the US, I actually do have allergies. Yep. So if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up or like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet.
That was pretty good.
If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comments section below. Until then,
let's talk about what she talked about.
India. Travel safe, smart, and fun.
We have friends that are
be
from
with
India.
you.
One is from Vizag, what I'm saying, and one is from Hyderabad. Their children are young, real young, and when we go over to visit, they stare. The children stare, even though we're in America. They stare, and the staring doesn't bother me because I am a starer. People get uncomfortable here with my staring. My friends do impersonations of me, and it has to do a lot with staring, and I don't mean anything by it. I'm just looking. I'm curious. So I think that's not going to bother me, the staring. I don't know how the Warrior Queen will hold up with it, if people staring. Well, I don't know. Because when we go to our Indian friend's house, the littlest one, probably 3 or 4, just stares at her like I mean, just completely. And the Warrior Queen is very gracious and kind, and will pat her on the head, but doesn't really acknowledge it or make an issue out of it. So I don't think the staring will bother me, because I'll be staring back. Indians will be staring at me, and I'll be staring back at them, and it'll be a stare off. And I don't find that I wouldn't find that offensive. I don't want to go to Goa. A lot of people say go to Goa. I'm going to India to see India, not to see a bunch of Europeans, right? I don't want to go to India to see a bunch of Europeans. I want to go to Vizag, and I want to see Indians, and I want to walk in the streets. And I like how it's funny because some of my Indian friends on YouTube said, Vizag, dude, it's like a small little country town. Why would you go there? That's only a couple million people. A couple million people is huge out here in America. It's huge, dude. Like, what? A couple million people? It's a big city. And I've heard a bunch of the vloggers talk about the dirt, being dirty from India. And I don't think that's going to be a big of a deal to the Warrior Queen and I, because we live in a very similar environment. We live in Arizona. Now, if you're in Phoenix and it's concrete jungle, and you don't get a whole lot of that, but you get out of Phoenix, you start getting in the areas, you're in the desert. We're in the desert. Even if you go up in the mountains, it's the high desert. The topsoil is different than the Midwest. And we have haboobs. And so big gusts of wind will take the loose dirt and just blow it. And it's a big, huge wall of dirt. And it's very common, I think, to live in Phoenix in the area and go out and you feel dirty afterwards. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a big deal. I think two things that will be a shock to the system, and it's going to be really, really hard, I think. The first one's going to be really, really hard, is to see the amount of poverty, right? To see the amount of poverty. I've been warned by some friends about Mumbai, to see the amount of kids who are struggling, and you will want to help them, but there's like millions of them. Like, how, it's like, that will be hard, I think. And I've watched a bunch of travel videos with the traffic, and I look at the traffic, and it seems like there is no rhyme or reason to the traffic. I don't know, maybe there is, but you see the rickshaws, you see the scooters, you see people walk, and it just looks like, how are we going to get to where we need to go? Like, this is insane. And I think what she said in her video I liked about, you're looking at it from a Western mindset. We are very much grid oriented. Phoenix is laid out in a grid, and there's a way of going. And again, you don't have the population. I guess I think Phoenix may have a couple million in it. I think maybe 4 million. I don't know. Maybe not that much. Warrior Queen was here. She'd tell me what it was. She'd be standing behind the camera yelling what it is and correcting me. But you're talking about like 13 million people in Mumbai, is that right? Somebody told me that 13 million people. Like, that's gonna clog up the streets, dude. I don't care what you do. So I think, like, I want to go to Vizag. I would like to visit Vizag. You're right on the coast. It's the city of destiny. My new Indian friend at church is from Vizag. And here's something that was very cool about Indians. The wife said, I have family in Vizag. If you go to Vizag, you stay with my family, and my uncles will take you out and show you the city, show you the country, whatever They've never met me. They've never met me at all. Like, just to do that, like, that's just like, yeah, sure, just call them up. No problem. We'll hook you up. And it's like, America, that doesn't happen. America, they're like, hey, I'm coming to America. You want to come to my house? No. It's unfortunate. Culture, I guess. But that was a good video. I'd be curious to ask you guys this, okay? To my Indian friends who live in India, do you think people will stare at the Warrior Queen and I? That's question number one. Question number two. Will there be any problems with the Warrior Queen and I hold hands in public? Question number three, what do you think will be the biggest shock that I'll have? Like I'll come back and be like, I wasn't ready for this scenario, that scenario. Let me know what you guys think on that.